Let me quote Frederick Douglass, the great, the former slave. This is 1863. In regard to the colored people, there is always more that is benevolent, I perceive, than just manifested toward us. What I ask for the Negro is not benevolence, not pity, not sympathy, but simply justice. The American people have always been anxious to know what they shall do with us. Do nothing with us. Your interference is doing us positive injury.
Yes. Wow. I love that quote. I love that quote. Amazing. Man. It's like he just summed up the problem and the solution in one. He literally summed up the problem and the solution in one quote.
From the 1800s, saying a black man in the 1800s, a slave, a former slave.
He got it then.
He could say that then. And we can't say that now.
We're gonna switch gears a little bit here, right? So you guys, Shelby Steele, we want to do a video on Shelby Steele because we love like Thomas Sowell and Watson Williams, all these people that no one ever talks about that exist. There's someone else no one ever talks about, and we want to shine light on Shelby Steele. I'm sure a lot of you guys know who he is and what he does. He's an author and a columnist. He's a documentary filmmaker, so he has a lot of things under his belt there. But he did an interview at the Hoover Institute. And he's talking about, this is a little while back, but he's talking about when they took a knee. Remember they bend the knee? Remember that whole bending of the knee for the national anthem? That whole crap that they did. So I like what he had to say. It wasn't just about that, but I wanted you guys to kind of hear what he has to say about this because I really like his take on things. Let's listen.
Thank you. Good to be here.
The protests. Again, you wrote of the players who took a knee during the national anthem in this last football season. They were mindlessly loyal to a black identity that had run its course. Yes. Wow, that's quite a claim. Go ahead and just explain what you mean by that.
There is blacks obviously have undergone in the course of America, the 300-400 years that America's been around, and victimized blacks and slavery and segregation and all those things we're all very much aware of. My point is that out of that came an identity, a group identity that has been, for better and worse, grounded in the idea of blacks as victims. And black victimization has become the sort of centerpiece of that identity. And that identity, I think, in the case of the NFL protesters, is sort of dislodged from reality and functions just pretty much on its own. So once they felt called upon to make some symbolic protest against American racism, they sort of mindlessly went along with that without ever stopping to investigate whether there really was oppression, to what degree of oppression is involved in American life today for blacks. My argument is that not very much. And yet the incongruence of not refusing to kneel for the national anthem when this country, despite its sins, also was a country that for the last 60 years has truly transformed itself morally.
I think it was Larry Elder who said that America has right the wrongs, right? It doesn't mean that America is perfect. It doesn't mean that there's no such thing as racism anymore. It's just not prevalent anymore. Like we say often, it's not prevalent anymore. And I do think that a lot of black people today, not all, but most, don't give enough credit to how far we come from that time. Because we were in a time where, I mean, like, there was, like, it was in law, right? Jim Crow law, you know, slavery before that, Jim Crow. And it was just embedded into law. Imagine the leap we have taken since that point. And this is why I have a problem with the oppression talk.
Yeah.
Because we have gone past that now.
I mean, if you ask most black Americans, what is it you're looking for? You know, even if you say reparations, most of them will say, you know, that's a start. What are you looking for?
Everybody will do that, right?
I mean, beyond being Hitler, what are you trying to get from this country? You know what I mean? It's done.
Yeah. This is it. Now you got to pick your own stuff up by your bootstraps.
Right.
It's your racial identity is not an agent of change. It is not going to build a new life for you. It is not going to do all the things that life calls upon you to do for yourself. In fact, it's a delusion in which you can waste an awful lot of time.
Back to your recent piece in the Wall Street Journal, Shelby. Quote, racism is endemic to the human condition, just as stupidity is. We will always have to be on guard against it. But now, in the United States, it is recognized as a scourge. What has happened is that Black America has been confronted with a new problem, the shock of freedom, close quote. The shock of freedom as a problem. Explain that.
Wow. That is a powerful statement that I truly agree with. I think that the whole reason why we don't know where we want to land is because we really don't know what that freedom is actually a responsibility that you have to deal with. Like you said, your blackness is not going to get you anything. It's just who you are. You don't have any control over that. You don't have any control of being a woman, being Black, and none of that. So it's what you do with your life that matters. But I think a lot of Black people don't really know what to do with freedom.
Yeah.
And so because they don't know what to do,
it's shocking.
We blame it all on white people because that's just what we've always done.
Yep.
So I love hearing people like Shelby Steele because, you know, they are who they are for a reason, and they've got a lot of wisdom, a lot of historical facts, and this is, if I ever did go to college, this is why I would probably go, just to listen to people like this.
Shock of freedom as a problem. Explain that.
Freedom is a frightening thing. It places such a burden of responsibility on you, on the person who has it. You're now responsible. Your reputation is based now on what you do. Well, combined with that was the fact that 4 centuries of oppression had left us, in many ways, underdeveloped. So when freedom comes, freedom then says, we're not oppressing you anymore. You're responsible for your underdevelopment.
Yep. That's what it says.
And you fix it or you don't. It's up to you. And that was, you know, freedom requires a wholly different orientation toward the world. And we became afraid, and what happens then again, when you're afraid, you don't know how to move forward. You start to move backward.
Shelby, the argument would be, and I know what the argument is because your piece in the Wall Street Journal created, let's put it this way, there was a response on the internet. You can Google Shelby Steele and some of the quotations I've just read, and you will get a response. And the argument would be, no, stop there. We're with you. Everything you've said makes perfect sense right up until you get to the point that we're free now. As you say, the era of Black oppression is over. No, it's not. There's still all kinds of racism endemic to this. How do you? Here's some statistics I found. 2015, Black households at the 20th and 40th percentiles of household income, that is, lower middle class and pretty poor people, earned an average of 55% as much as white households at those same 2 percentiles. And that's exactly the same figure as in 1967.
Yeah.
And so the answer is, Dr. Steele, just look at we haven't, I shouldn't say we, African Americans haven't made an iota of progress. Of course this has to be because we're still oppressed. How do you deal with that argument, Shelby?
It's a corruption. And it's a corruption because if you look at the statistical difference, from then up to now, who says that's because of racism?
Right.
Maybe it's because you haven't yet developed the value system to the ideas with which to thrive in freedom.
So a lot of black people who think like this are in the mindset that they're it's because they're black is the reason why they can't move forward because of, you know, the white man, all these things. But my argument will always be that, yeah, but why are you giving your skin color so much agency over you like that? Mm-hmm. Why is that the thing that has to be holding you back?
Right. Because if you're talking about the 60s, that's when really a lot of this protest and stuff really started.
Yeah.
And what it looks like to me is that when you have a bunch of people that where all they do is protest because they're waiting for the white man to free them by giving them stuff all the time, then what you've done is you've kind of stifled yourself in a place. So we've not left the 60s. Mm-hmm. We're still mentally a part of the 60s. So when you look at the fact that our income and things like that really haven't changed, it's because we really haven't changed.
Right.
We're still saying we shall overcome in 2024.
Right.
Well, if you're still saying that, then at some point you have to look within yourself and say, have I done everything? Now, I don't have a lot of money myself. You know what I mean? But that is because I've made a lot of mistakes that I chose to make.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm doing better, but I've made a lot of mistakes that I chose. But I own that. Mm-hmm. And that's my freedom.
Right.
Is that I get to own my mistakes. I don't get to give it to white people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Freedom is a big responsibility in which you cannot call yourself free if you still are trying to tie your freedom to somebody else. That makes people think that, did we really want slavery to end? Yeah. Or did we still want these white people to be taking care of us because that gives us an excuse? To not move forward.
Chains already. Like, break the chains already. Like, you're free.
If you're free, you got to show what you're made of. And that's hard for a lot of people. It's hard because especially in a place like America where it's the survival of the fittest, you got to get out there and make something of yourself. That's true for white people here.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to be Donald Trump. Not everybody's going to be Megyn Kelly. Not everybody's going to be Candace Owens. You had to have some stuff in this world to get along in this world. And a lot of people are very afraid of that. And like he said, when people are afraid, sometimes they revert backwards because they have no answers forward.
America is known as the land of opportunity for a reason. Mm-hmm. And that opportunity really lies within you. I mean, like, if you have to make your life what you want it to be. You can't just sit back and wait for handouts and things like that. You have to make something of your life. But I think a lot of black people struggle with that because they haven't succeeded and they're too busy playing the blame game that they can't see that you really do hold the key. You have the key. You know, and for some reason you think it's somewhere else and it's not.
Maybe you don't know what to do with the opportunities that surround you. It's understandable. You were oppressed. And people have not pointed out to you the challenge of freedom. And what do people do with freedom when they don't know how to handle it? They reinvent their oppression, even as it has faded away. They make it up in their mind all over again. Racism is around every corner. There is systemic racism. There's structural racism. There are microaggressions, and there's white privilege, and all of this. This is designed again is the shock of freedom. And not knowing. I mean, you look at today's black leadership, they have no clue of how to move ahead. All they can think to do is ask for more from the government. Well, we've asked for the government has given us almost everything. Nowhere in history has the government paid off its people more than America has in the last 60 years. And yet we are, by most socioeconomic measures, farther behind white America than we were in the 50s, when we had none of these social programs and so forth. So it is, freedom it comes with a judgmentalism. It judges you. If you don't know how to thrive in freedom, it means that you are at fault. You are, and the worst word you can use regarding blacks, you are inferior. Because freedom now is saying you can't use oppression as an excuse anymore. And so one of my points about the protest, the NFL protests, and the same with Black Lives Matter, is that there's this sort of hysterical protesting that when they can't even articulate what they're protesting against. Well, if racism is so virulent, it ought to be obvious. When I was a kid, it was obvious. No one denied it. It was visible to everybody every day. And that was the beginning and the end of it. Today, where is it? Where are you being stopped?
Shelby, you said...
I just want to say that, we say this often, that racism exists. It's just not prevalent. Mm-hmm. And every time someone says, I have these racist encounters on a daily basis, really, that is... I don't have to know you to know that's not true.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something that you're hiding behind something there, because there's no way that there's no way it's prevalent like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like you said, when it comes to protesting, a lot of these people out here protesting don't, number one, really even know what they're protesting. There's been videos where they have done like men on the street interviews with people who are during protest, and people have asked, like, what are you protesting for? Women's rights, whatever the protest is, right? For women's rights, what's that? What rights do women not have that they should get? Black rights. Okay, what rights do black people not have that we're supposed to get that you don't? And a lot of them don't even know the answer. There is no answer. Protesting to me has always been the most lamest thing you can do, I think, in my opinion. Especially, I'm talking about today. Maybe in yesteryear it had a place, but today I feel like you're wasting time.
Yeah. Mostly if you look at protesters, I can look at them and say, have you exhausted every avenue in your life for your life to be better, for you to be standing out in the street, running your mouth with a sign? And the answer to that will be no.
Right.
You aren't. You know what I mean? And so, look, I've always said that the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is that the Republican Party gives you no excuse.
Yeah.
With the Democratic Party, the reason why a lot of young people like it, and the reason why a lot of minorities like it, and a lot of women like it, is because it gives you the excuse to blame. Mm-hmm. Because when people are not oppressed, but when they're going through a hard time in life, they tend to want to project, right, instead of going inwards.
Right.
And so whenever I see someone who's just going off, like when women do it, when women walk around, women's rights, I'm like, what? What are you talking about?
What's the
you
right?
Tell me one thing right now you can do that men can't, that men can do you can't do. It's BS.
I'm talking about legally. Like there's no laws. What is it? There's
currently
nothing.
If you go to corporate America right now, most corporate America, businesses where there's like lots of people, they have to take classes on black women and their hair.
Yeah.
And women and how to talk when women are in the room.
Yeah.
So how are you oppressed if the entire system is benefiting you the most it can?
Let me read you. You know this well. President Johnson's 1965 commencement address at Howard University. Yeah. Quote, "You do not take a person who has been hobbled by chains and bring him up to the starting line of a race and say, you're free to compete with the others. Ugh. Equal opportunity is essential, but not enough." Close quote. So this notion that there has to be compensation for all those years of oppression is fundamental to all policy concerning African Americans for the last half century and more.
Yes. I remember that speech has been quoted. I've quoted it, I don't know how many times. You can't bring somebody up to the starting line that's been oppressed and expect them to compete. What that is really about is not about black people. That statement was about what I've written a good deal about, white guilt. And it was a horrible historical, as far as I'm concerned, mistake, because what Johnson was saying was, we oppressed you, now we're going to lift you up and redeem you.
Yeah.
You're still our responsibility.
Your fate remains in our hands. Your fate, you don't see your fate as being in your hands.
Yeah.
It's now in our hands, the government's hands, every kind of philanthropic group's hand, everybody's hands but yours.
And you know what's funny? You know what's funny about that Lyndon Johnson quote? That's people always quote that. And a lot of black people love that quote because they're like, see, there's a white man here saying it. He's saying it. They oppressed us. See, they oppressed us. He's saying it. And I'm like, yeah, no, read between the lines. He's saying that your life is still in his hands and your happiness is still in his hands. It's still a form of slavery.
Right.
He's still trying to keep you in the mindset that you still need us. And then on the opposite side, there's that white guilt on the Lyndon Johnson side, where he's like, "Oh my God," which I don't think he has white guilt. I don't think Lyndon Johnson. Yeah, I honestly don't believe that at all. But there are white people who think, well, my, great grandparents were, slave owners, and so I have this guilt that, have this white privilege and I'm supposed to go and help you now because I'm, and it's like, no, this is all a bunch of BS. There is no white privilege. White people should not have any white guilt. This is stupid. And Lyndon Johnson was 100% wrong, and it's keeping you in chains thinking about these kind of subjects.
And we really have mentally been in chains since then.
Yes, we have.
Because we are still waiting for them to feel sorry for us.
Yeah.
And it's never going to happen.
No.
And it shouldn't happen. No white person should be walking around feeling sorry for the sins of their ancestors. My grandmother's father was a racist.
Yeah. Right.
He was white. My grandmother's white. You know what I mean? Her father was racist.
Right.
And what is she supposed to do? What I mean?
Right.
What is that? Who cares? that dies with them.
Yeah. It's true.
You know what I mean? And by the way, I'm with Jesse Lee Peterson, and I get more and more close to this point of view, more and more as I go along, is that there is no racism, there's only good and evil.
Yeah.
And as I get closer to God, and as I read the Bible, I start to see that we dissect sin, and we try to make it look like it's something bigger than one is bigger than the other. But the truth is that
this is
people who are racist, no matter what color, that is a sin. You know what I mean? And so I'm not about to just call a bunch of white people evil, especially when they died in the Civil War for us, when they helped us in the Underground Railroad, when they were out on marching on Washington, helping us, while they're still out there. And even though I don't believe in BLM, out there in BLM,
trying to help out. Okay,
you know what I mean? I'm not doing that. That is not healthy. It makes no sense. And when does it end? Where does the buck stop? I mean, when is it that we are just going to say that, hey, there's a lot of stuff that people did in the past that were not right. Everybody has been either the hammer or the nail, a slave or a slave owner. What is it? White people were owned by Northern Africans,
right?
At one point.
I mean,
you know what I mean? Well, there was white slavery. Black people owned slaves in America. The whole reason we were over here is because Africans sold their own people to colonizers.
Yeah, we don't want to talk
But we don't want to talk about the inconvenient truths about what's going on here. And I blame this on black leaders, which again, I don't know why black people have leaders.
Jesse Lee Peterson talked about that years ago, that why do you need a leader? And you know what? It never dawned on me prior to my conservative mind, my liberal mind. When I heard him say that, when he said, why do we black people need a leader? Why? And that is a excellent question, because the answer to that is that we don't need a leader. And that is also what keeps us in chains and keeps us following and keeps us doing the exact same thing over and over again, staying stagnant and just doing the same thing. It's like, it's repetitive. Like, we do not need leaders in that way, but yet we think that we do. And a lot of black people, I feel like, want white acceptance or want white people to feel like they owe us something.
White people are not your God.
They're not.
But that's how we treat white people. We treat them like they are some God. Like they gotta give us and set our life up. God is my God. White people are not my God.
They're not superior to me. They're just people.
They're just people.
That's it. Just like me. I'm just
why
people.
is it that whenever we do have black leaders, if you're gonna have one, they're always Ben Crump, Al Sharpton, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Louis Farrakhan, all the people who think like that.
Yeah.
It's never Shelby Steele, Walter Williams, Thomas Sowell, Larry Elder. Robert Woodson. It's never anybody like that. It's always people like that. Alan West. It's never anybody like that. It's always those types of people that think just like that keep black people lost in 1960.
Yeah.
It's never the people who want to move forward. They never talk about Booker T. Washington, but they love talking about W.E.B. Du Bois.
We never even look at those.
We barely talk about Frederick Douglass anymore.
Yeah. It's true.
You know what I mean? And so you talk about Madam C.J. Walker. Well, she was the first self-made millionaire woman of any race.
Not black.
And definitely not in the 60s. We're talking about the 20s and the 30s. Yeah. She lived next door to Rockefeller.
You think that she was focused on her race?
How come we don't talk about that? That's another inconvenient truth for us.
That woman was focused on entrepreneurship and money.
And so we then have had 60 years of white guilt. White guilt is a very specific thing. It is not a genuine feeling of guilt. Nothing to do with that. It is the terror, the literal terror of being seen as a racist.
So you've got disproportionate poverty, and even among African Americans who are doing well, they're not doing as well as their white counterparts. Mm-hmm. What do you do?
The first thing I think you do is you name the reasons why. And certainly, racism is no longer a reason. If it is a reason, it is 18th or 20th on the list of reasons. It is not worth your time. There has to be, right now we have an identity as blacks that's victim focused. We're victims, which basically is designed to tap into white guilt and get them to give us all kinds of little, basically crumbs.
Last question, Shelby. Let me quote Frederick Douglass, the great, the former slave. This is 1863. In regard to the colored people, there is always more that is benevolent, I perceive, than just manifested toward us. What I ask for the Negro is not benevolence, not pity, not sympathy, but simply justice. The American people have always been anxious to know what they shall do with us. Do nothing with us. Your interference is doing us positive injury. Close.
Yes.
That's Frederick.
Wow.
I love that quote. I love that quote.
That is such a...
That's be one of our favorite quotes.
That is probably my favorite quote. I think I've...
Amazing. Man. It's like he just summed up the problem and the solution in one. He literally summed up the problem and solution in one quote.
From the 1800s, saying a black man in the 1800s dealing a slave, a former slave.
He got it then.
He could say that then, and we can't say that now.
How is that?
It's complete brainwashing. It just can't be anything else.
Y'all, in fact that he can sum up the problem and solution all in one quote is just amazing to me. Do nothing. Just live. We're black. You're white. We're all Americans. We're Americans.
And that's what Booker T. Washington was trying to tell. He's just saying we're not going anywhere. We need to stay where we are and get people educated.
Yes.
And start opening up some businesses.
There you go.
And one of the reasons why we don't do as well is because we don't have any more black businesses. Back in Jim Crow years, we had black businesses.
Yes.
I mean, Black Wall Street was not the only
it was all
area in the South that was like that. You know what I mean? But we had more character then. We had more staying power. And I think because it was hard, and I always say that because I think that when life is harder, we do better in life.
There too.
We stand up a little bit more. But when everything gets easy and everybody's and there's not much to fight for anymore, we become lax. And this is the reason why our country in general, including white people and just our country, Americans, which is why we're not doing so well. It's because we've been comfortable for much too long. And we took our eye off the ball.
It's true.
And we've landed into a place where now we got migrants running through our cities. And we've got Marxist governments trying to get rid of our Constitution. And if we're not careful, they can.
I'm just going to rewind to hear that quote. I just want to hear this quote one more time.
In regard to the colored people, there is always more that is benevolent, I perceive, than just manifested toward us. What I ask for the Negro is not benevolence, not pity, not sympathy, but simply justice. The American people have always been anxious to know what they shall do with us. Do nothing with us. Your interference is doing us positive injury. Close quote. That's Frederick Douglass speaking to white Americans in 1863. Last question. What does Shelby Steele say to white Americans today?
Well, I couldn't say anything better than that. That is. I've quoted that myself. I've used it. I'm great fan of Frederick Douglass. He's the greatest of all time. What truth? How long is it going to take us to absorb that message? So simply put, yet so absolutely true. And what I would say to whites is have a little more faith in yourself. Do you have ill will toward people of different races and backgrounds? Then you obviously know that's something you cannot indulge. That's it. That's it.
That last part, I think he's really addressing the white people, because what I'm happy that's happening right now, you guys, I think we said this before, what I'm happy right now is that white people, there are a lot of white people who are just starting to get that point. And I think that I like that a lot of white people right now are just like, well, forget it. I'm just gonna say what I want to say. I know I'm not racist. I'm just gonna say what I want to say, and just not care anymore, because you can't be afraid to say things.
No, first of all, for freedom of speech sake.
Yeah. So yeah, let's what you think about what Shelby Steele had to say, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Leave some comments below, and we will see you guys in the next video. Bye.